The after show.
Time for the after show, where we discuss politics on the Improbability engine, and I'm going to let Joe take the lead here.
Well, Will, this one's gonna hit you right in the gut. We talked in the during the sports segment of this, and I hope everybody's listening to that. We talked about the University of Louisville women beating Kentucky's basketball team and how that was a big deal for the University of Louisville. Well, bad news for the University of Louisville. The intercession of Governor Matt Bevin into the University of Louisville board is now threatening the university's their what is it called? Their accreditation.
They've been put on probation because
which is a major issue.
It is.
And major in a bad way.
And it's all the fault of the governor. I mean, the reason the accreditation board cited was government interference with the board of trustees.
Absolutely. And the reason why that's important, okay, we live in Murray, Kentucky. This is a college town. The college is the number one employer in this town. If the accreditation of a public university the size of Louisville can be threatened by the meddling of a busybody governor, you don't think he could do the same thing at Murray or at Moorhead or in Richmond at EKU or at Northern Kentucky or wherever that there's a chance for him to do so?
Did you see the story about Eastern Kentucky University?
Yeah, having to cut programs.
I think they're cutting like 14 programs.
Yeah.
And French and humanities are among the programs that they're cutting,
yeah.
Which, you know, number one, it's appalling that we live in a time where universities are having to cut programs that one would think are part of normal instruction, like
right.
Humanities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of basic instruction. But number two, it goes along with something that George Carlin says in a great YouTube clip where he talks about the fact that the owners of this country do not want people capable of critical thinking. They want obedient workers. And so if that's what you want, what do? You cut humanities, you cut the arts, you cut foreign languages, you cut things like that. You just teach them the things that they need to know to be obedient workers.
Yeah, the big thing that's telling to me is whenever we talk about the American education system, for all of its faults, and there are many, this is still the same system that entices students from across the globe because they want to be a part of the American liberal arts education. They want to know that broad background knowledge that comes with it. They don't want a technical degree. They can go get a technical degree anywhere. They want a liberal arts education. That's why they're coming to the United States. And that's one of the big strengths that we've had. Well, if you start cutting out big chunks of things like the humanities or foreign languages, how are Kentucky workers being served by being less able to compete with foreign workers for jobs? If you take away their ability to communicate, if you take away their ability to critically think and to look at a problem and be able to solve it, what are you wanting them to do? Because that's what's going on right now. You want to cut post-secondary education? Know what the recourse is. This is going to have major shockwaves, and it's going to reverberate all the way down to the city levels. And places like Murray, Kentucky, and Moorhead, Kentucky, and even Richmond, Kentucky are the ones who are going to pay the price for this, with money coming out of their pockets and by having them to make up the gaps that are happening all across the board. If you want to see how badly this kind of setup works, look no further than the state of Kansas. Kansas is running massive deficits. Their education system is in shambles, and they are in real trouble in that state only because they decided we're going to cut taxes to spur investment and to spur the economy, and it doesn't work.
Now, one political issue that I would like to discuss is fake news. it is perhaps, I mean, you can argue about what the scariest thing in the country going forward is, but fake news has to be up close to the top. And for people who don't know, there are websites out there that produce not biased stories.
Mm-hmm.
Stories that are completely and totally fabricated.
Right.
Okay? And they get linked on Facebook, and millions of people see them. There was an interview that I saw on MSNBC yesterday with the guy who runs several of these websites. One of the stories that they put out before the election was a story that suggested that somebody who had been involved in Hillary Clinton's email scandal had been murdered, and it suggested that Hillary was involved in the murder. Now, everything in the story, according to the guy who produced the story, who was interviewed on TV, everything in the story was a lie, okay?
Right.
It was all a lie.
Not editorialized.
Not editorialized.
Fabricated.
Yes, fabricated. It was all a complete lie. None of it happened. And yet, I remember when it came out, I had friends who believed it. I had one friend who, when I told him, this is garbage, he unfriended me on Facebook. Yep. So, this is a huge threat. People need to understand a large percentage of the news stories you see on Facebook are fake. All right, check them out. And other stories, the story itself may be true, but the headline is a lie.
Right.
The headline will say something, and you read the story, and you say, "Well, that's not what the headline said."
Right.
So you have to be very careful, or you'll wind up believing things that are in no way true.
Right. Well, Mark Twain said it best. It's not what we don't know that kills us. It's what we know without a doubt that isn't true. That's what kills us. And he's absolutely right. We can have disagreements about policy and about facts. We can say, well, this seems to be the main reason for this to be happening. Well, there's this. You can't argue with a factual statement. That's the nature of a fact. It is. Whether you believe it or not, it is.
Now, there are people, and this isn't fake news, this is something different. Mm-hmm. There are people who will take facts and twist them. An example, Breitbart recently used data from the Weather Channel,
right,
where they claimed that there had been a decrease in world temperature of 1 degree over the last 6 months. And they were talking about how it disproved global warming. What they didn't tell you was that data, the decrease of 1 degree, it was over land areas only.
Which is only 30% of the entire surface of the Earth.
The rest of the Earth, the water, which is 70%, temperatures went up, and overall it was the warmest, November was the warmest November on record.
Yeah, it's one of those where one of the I guess it'd be the Carl Sagan of my generation. You look at these scientists, you try to understand what they're coming from. They're more educated in their fields than I am. I know this. That doesn't make them bad. That doesn't make them more apt to be wrong. But whenever we hear some of the rhetoric that's being espoused, one of the things that I personally refer to in my life is I want people to base their opinions on facts and not base their facts on their opinions.
I agree.
And that's a big deal for me. I mean, to the point where I will admit when I'm wrong. I will reassess at all times.
Really?
When it happens, I'll let you know. But that's what you've got to be able to do. And the problem is, we have people who aren't going to do that.
Well, and that's something I've never been able to understand, is why people can't admit that they're wrong.
Insecurity.
It has never made sense to me. everybody is wrong on occasion. And one thing that my wife and I, early in our marriage, that she would freak out when she would say something, I'd say, well, that's crazy. And she would say, you're calling me crazy. Well, no. You just said something crazy. I say crazy things, too. We all say crazy things.
Right.
If you do something wrong, admit it and make a note of it so that you don't do it again. We all do wrong things that are wrong.
Reminds me of a joke. Husband and wife are watching an old black and white movie on television. It's a Western. And the husband and wife are sitting there, and the husband's seen the movie like 10 or 12 times. It's a good one. And the husband leans over to his wife and says, I bet you a kiss that a horse falls in the hole in the next minute. The wife goes, you're on. Well, sure enough, inside the next minute, horse falls into a hole, breaks its leg. Husband goes, honey, you don't have to pay me on that bet. I've seen this movie like 20 times, and I knew the horse was going to fall into a hole. And she looks over at him and says, no, I'll pay you. I've seen this movie about 20 times too, but I just thought the horse would be smart enough not to fall in this time. It's one of those where you want to have some critical thinking. I tell you what, I challenge our readers. I challenge our listeners. The next time you see an article that seems too crazy, it's just crazy. Why hasn't this been picked up by mainstream media? The whole mainstream media thing, because I'm seeing it on both sides now. Do me a favor. Take that article. Find 3 supporting articles that say the same thing, that don't refute the facts and don't refute the basic premises. And I'm talking about on the opposite side of the political spectrum. If you're a lefty, find something from the Wall Street Journal or Forbes that says that some of this is true, that's backing up what's going on here. If you're on the right, find something from the Huffington Post, if that's what you're into. If you're in the middle, find something from NPR or go to the BBC. Find something that's not biased or you know it's biased and can counteract it. Use some critical thinking skills, people. This is a real thing. And before you click share, read the article, make sure what they're saying is true, or if it's satire, make sure your crazy uncle knows it's satire.
Label it as such.
I mean, just do your part in that. I mean, really, just do your part in that. Because, frankly, the only way that the voices of lies can be drowned out is by voices of truth being louder.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to do.
Absolutely.
What else you got, Will?
I'm out.
Yeah, me too. So the off-again, on-again bromance between Donald Trump and Dr. What's-his-face?
Kevorkian?
No. What's the guy? Ben
Carson.
Ben
It's
Carson.
on again.
It's on again. So after running for president, then saying that he would decline any job in government because he had no government experience, Dr. Ben Carson has taken a job as the nominee for Housing and Urban Development under the Trump administration. So it just goes to show you, the next time you're in a job interview and they ask you how many years of experience you have, tell them it doesn't matter because experience is overrated.
There you go. That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine. Okay.